Etwa Ahniahala, the path of wisdom, was one of two great towers that sat high in the Sepinal Mountains. Its sister, Etwa Ahniahala, was called the path of truth, and they had been built before the drowning of the world, when the seas had risen and swallowed all the land save Araheth. Few remembered them, and then only in legend. They were called the Pillars of Heaven, and it was said they held up the dome of the sky. Sep did not know if this was true, but as he and Tewfik trudged up the endless stairs and walked through the winding paths of the tower, moving ever upward, he thought that if anything could support the dome of heaven, it would be these towers. Carved from the tallest mountain peak of the Sepinals, they were no spindly slivers of stone. Each was a mountain to itself, and large enough, he thought, that they could swallow every man, woman and child who lived in the great port city of Jarek, and with room to spare. And yet it was empty. The paths of the tower seemed to go on forever. That's how Sep thought of them, not corridors or hallways, but paths as one might find in a forest. The Elan had made these towers at the height of their power, before the treachery of Malasiphus had doomed them to extinction, and they had not built as men build, all straight lines and angles. The stone walls were carved and cut into the shape of trees whose branches arched overhead, forming the ceiling from which golden and silver lamps once hung. And like a forest, there were places where one could stray from the path, slipping between an opening in the trees, and discover a hidden glade of granite oaks and delicate stone saplings, or the hollow of a great marble grotto with a frozen pond of onyx at its center, reflecting the faux sky with stars of amethyst and diamond, sapphire and opal, that gleamed and sparkled in the light of their lamps. The illusion was perfect, and there were times when his thoughts strayed, that Sep forgot he was in the heart of a mountain, and only remembered when, stumbling, he reached out a hand to steady himself, and felt not the smooth bark of an elm but the cold stone of a sculpted tree. Nos, what this place must have looked like when the Elan had lived here, and the silver and golden lamps were lit, bathing the forest in their light. Even with the dim light of their smoky lanterns, it was beautiful. Here, where no tree could ever grow, the Elan had made a forest bloom, and it was treacherously beautiful. Sep considered how easily one could lose their way in the wandering paths of the forest, with no comfort for the belly from its fruit-laden trees. He followed Tewfik closely, who seemed to know the way to take, but there were dozens, perhaps hundreds of twists and turns, paths leading off the main road that looked themselves to be thoroughfares. Occasionally he would pause and look at their surroundings, examining the landmarks before turning left or right, or taking a flight of stairs or a steep incline. Stairs were uncommon, Sep intuited, because they disturbed the natural feel of the forest, and where they found them, they were hidden behind a facade of trees. Mostly one ascended or descended by the winding paths, and Sep thought stairs were placed only where necessary, and even then they resembled roots and stones, not the square-cut steps men would have made. "How do you know the way?" Sep asked. "I memorized it, and I have this." He held up a narrow piece of parchment, filled with runes Sep did not recognize. The last Elan once lived here, long ago. He remembered the paths and taught them to me, in case other avenues of escape were closed to us. Sep felt the recrimination in Tewfik's words. His recklessness had put more than his own life in jeopardy, and if not for Tewfik, it would have damned more than himself. He said nothing, and they walked in silence. After a while, Tewfik spoke again. "The stars," he said, pointing to the gemstone constellations set in the ceiling as they stopped in a clearing. "They mark our path. This," he said, handing Sep the parchment, "is a map of sorts. It tells which constellations to follow to find our way. Once, when men braved the sea, they sailed by the light of the stars, setting their course by the constellations. It might not seem like it, but the clearings we pass through are deliberate, and the stars set in the stone are signs. The constellation of Noth points north, and above each door or entrance is a constellation that names the room or the path they lead to. It is no different than, say, Jarek, with signs over the different buildings and each street bearing a name. Learn the constellations, and the path is clear. But do not stray, for this is the path I know. We would soon be lost if we took another course. and I do not know that I could lead us out by another way.